Perhaps the most important fundamental that we can talk about is trigger control. And trigger control is the make or break between whether or not you're going to hit point of aim, point of impact. We're talking aim small, miss small. If I aim at an entire silhouette and hit him in the shoulder, I'm happy. Why? Because I was aiming at the entire silhouette. Now if I want to get really surgical, I've got to hone that down. Now I need to be shooting at the dude's button on his shirt or his zipper. And then whenever I don't hit that button or zipper, I need to work harder to fail my way to that success. Trigger control is one of the most difficult things to learn to master, but you can learn to master it in a two-step process. The first process that you can learn to control and master is as you make contact with the trigger, it pulls directly to the rear, the round breaks and goes off. Boom! You should fully have retained that trigger. Your fingers should be squeezed all the way to the rear. That second stage that you next need to learn and master is allowing that trigger reset and then breaking off that next shot. If you get really good at trigger control, your control pairs, your hammer pairs, your standard response, you can be very quick and very, very accurate because you're just mastering the manipulation of that trigger control. Now, a few things that you don't want to do is to jerk the trigger. And by jerking the trigger, what we're talking about is you've got your finger placed correctly on the trigger, but then you're jerking it with a motion. In a sense, you're controlling that trigger with your entire hand. You need to learn to isolate the motion of just your trigger finger from that joint up, because that's all that's manipulating that trigger. Everything else in your hands is about your grip. The next thing that you don't want to do for your trigger control is slap the trigger. Slapping the trigger is a matter of taking your finger and it's straighten off the trigger, and rather than placing it on the trigger, you slap it. Slapping the trigger will produce severe frustration in terms of your point of aim and point of impact. Where you place your finger on the trigger makes a big difference. One of the things that you want to avoid is you want to avoid over-penetrating the trigger guard. Over-penetration, you have too much finger hanging out and you're engaging and manipulating the trigger with the wrong part of the finger. Proper trigger control means placing that first pad, that little pad, directly on the face of the trigger. Now remember that trigger control is learned in two stages, but complete trigger control means that whenever you break the shot off, you're immediately going back to that reset, and you have the ability to put multiple rounds on target in a very quick manner.